You already started? All right, I'm gonna have to edit that out. Thanks. Gosh. All right, so I wanted to talk about how, like, the actual photo layout, because this isn't something we've talked about or we've done. So as part of, I'm just gonna have to start again now. What's up with you?
We starting over?
I don't know. No, I'm just gonna. You know what? I put the camera on him. Go ahead. All right. This is the goofball that's interrupting everything. I'm just gonna leave. I'm gonna leave it in there. All
That's
right.
good.
Anyway, so as we're looking at trying to draw a wider narrative with our images, I wanted to talk about how we would actually display those images. Okay. And I'm going to show you guys how to do this with, kind of classically, I guess you should say. I'm going to show you guys how to actually cut Mapboard. If you guys are so inclined and you would like to do it digitally, you guys are welcome to do that, but I'm not going to cover that in this class. So that would depend on you actually having that skill set or working with someone, yeah. And then of course you'd have to find a way to actually print that out large scale as well. So, but I think this is probably going to be a better option for most of us. All right, so I wanted to talk about just how what the process would look like, because up until this point in class, I've asked you guys to basically do 8x10s for everything. And on this one, you don't have to, in fact, not everything should be an 8x10. I want to talk about things like hierarchy and variation of size and shape to try to and grid to create a more pleasant layout. Okay, so I wanted to just kind of start what my process would look like, just to give you guys an idea of how to start on this. So after you've shot everything and you have all of your images taken, you process, you're going to make contact sheets. You're going to want to sit down with your contact sheets and then make decisions about the images that, evaluate the images and just determine which images actually best, expand that narrative, tell that wider story, okay? So what I would do is, and I have some of these if you guys would like to borrow them, just like I've done here. Like you can see here, this is that same roll I shot over at the beginning of the semester that I've put some images out from before. We've actually done a couple of these images. So I've gone through here and I selected one of the shots of the moose and I went ahead and circled that. So I mean that would be basically what I do is I'm just going to go through and just kind of quickly evaluate and just make decisions about which images I like best. I did like this image that I shot of the hay with the moon in the background. I also got a couple of kind of backlit shots in some tall grass here. This isn't necessarily a good representation of a strong narrative, but I'm just trying to give you guys an idea of how I would actually try to plan this out. And because you don't want to be in the position oh, I'm just going to print a bunch of stuff. And then when I realize I can't make it fit together, then I'm going to be frustrated. So you want to develop a plan on the front end. Hey, hold on for a second. So, and then, I kind of like this image here. I got low and did a shot of some
Daniel.
well, it's some kind of weed, some kind of noxious weed. All right. Now the next thing, and I'll pick another one here just because I know that I need something. I don't want too many moon shots, but it doesn't really matter because I'm not going to do anything with it anyway. But I actually here's the moon right over these bluffs, so maybe I'll grab that one as well. Now I would want to use a loop, take a look, evaluate, make sure that all the images that I'm choosing are actually sharp to the best of my knowledge. I may, of course, once I get in the darkroom, have to actually select a different image. Hopefully it's not the hay image because I only shot one of those darn things. No, I don't know what I was thinking. But now I have 5 images, okay? So I want to start to think about, how those images would work together. So always, 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 you want to work with pencil and paper first, okay? So think about the shots and then now you're going to try to plan. You're going to think about, okay, what's the most important shot? What is the signature shot or the clincher shot? And try to think of it in those terms, the terms we talked about, what feels like an eon ago, because I haven't seen you guys because of the Thanksgiving break. So try to think in terms of which shots best tell the story, and then create hierarchy. You're going to start to, now I've selected 5 images here. Now I'm going to start to think about which image best tells the narrative, and which one do I want to play largest. Okay, so maybe I'm going to decide here.
Would this be like a photo essay of maybe your walk?
Yeah, yeah, not the best narrative here. I'm just trying to give you, yeah. So I'm gonna say, this is actually a different day, totally unrelated, but we're gonna keep it in there anyway. I'm gonna go with, I really like that shot of the hay with the moon in the background. So I'm gonna go with that. So I'm probably gonna be building most of my decision making around. I'm gonna have an 8x10 and it's a horizontal. Okay. Then I'm gonna start making decisions about how else I might want to, kind of arrange images.
Shouldn't you write down what image you're using there too, so you know?
I can, yeah. Make sure you're keeping track of that, so that's fine. Hey, all right, there. So now I might think about the photographs in context of other things, like do I want to do a sequence? So, I have a lot of wide shots. I have this detailed shot. So I might say, and maybe I could even add a shot here. Maybe I'll make try to do a sequence. No, because that still has that bluff in the background. I'm getting way too technical about this, actually, as if I was really going to do this. I'm like, no, I can't use that image. It has that same feature in it. I'll do it anyway. Okay, so I'm going to grab one of these that has the road in it as well.
So is that kind of a hint? Don't use one that has the same features?
Well, you want variation. I mean, just like when, some of you guys, when you got your feedback on the portrait photography shot or assignment, the feedback that I had was we had a lot of people who just basically shot the same kind of shot every time. So as we're talking about expanding the narrative, trying to tell, engage in more storytelling, obviously you want to have some differentiation, unless there's some reason why those shots would be similar. Like if I was doing a photo essay on, some sort of sporting event, and I wanted to show a sequence of shots of, a basketball player, driving the lane, he's dribbling, then he's jumping and he's, got his hand up, and then we see him, at the apex and the ball is going in. That would be, an acceptable sequence of shots that we could use as a sequence that, it's okay that they look similar. But yeah, you do want to have variation. If you're just basically giving the same information over and over again, you're not really expanding the narrative, okay? But I am kind of looking at something here as a possible sequence. I'm thinking about if there is a narrative in these images that I shot here, because they're just a bunch of landscape images, maybe the narrative is, on this particular walk, I had the sun setting, and then when I was returning from that walk, the moon had risen. So maybe I treat this like a sequence, and I have this shot here of the sun setting. I have another shot here where the moon has just risen, and then another shot where the moon is a little bit higher, and then of course what I'm calling my signature or my clincher is actually the moon a little bit higher. That's that detailed shot that I was working on with dodging and burning, that hay shot that I had. So,
and if you wanted to do that, say, well, I mean, you're going to talk about the mountain boards next, but say, for example, you might do 3 small ones and then have one big one, right?
Yes, absolutely. That's exactly what I'm talking about. So, and what I've done here is I just added another image to this, and I would be doing this basically I'm trying to create a sequence here. So now I have 3 photographs that I've chosen here that I just discussed that I'm thinking about doing a sequence. So now I want to think about the kind of treatment. Okay, so Eric's right. A sequence, obviously, they're not, they tell part of the story, but they're not necessarily the most impactful photographs in that story, okay? And so I'm gonna look at the photographs and I'm think, okay, well, how do I wanna play these photographs? And that's where actually using a China marker on the contact sheet is really helpful. So in this one you see here, I mean, I basically had just done large rectangles on the photos that I selected at first. But on this one here, I actually was already starting to think ahead because I was thinking about sequence, and I kind of made it like a square, all right? So now I might go back and like say this one, I mean, I want this bluff, so I'm gonna kind of cut, maybe I'm gonna indicate that I'm gonna crop here just to the edge of the moon, and then here, so now I'm indicating another square, and then this sunset shot, I kind of like the sun on the right hand side, the right third. So I would indicate, you know, and I might even like, you know, 1, or actually this 1, 2, 3, even indicate the sequence. And now make this, you know, decision, okay, so I have 3, and now this is where I'm talking about, I have a horizontal, I'm now indicating, I'm gonna try 3 squares, okay? So we wanna vary the size, the orientation, the shape of the images, okay?
Also, about marking on the actual contact sheet, right? Like, obviously, we could print out more of them if we need to, right? But say if we didn't want to mark on our actual contact sheet, could we photocopy it and then do that? Would that be acceptable?
Sure. I don't know why you. The contact sheet, and I want you, and I want to. I'm gonna go ahead. I want to talk about this because I want to help you guys to.
I just like to keep things pure. Is speaking in my thing.
Well, there's absolutely nothing wrong with this, and if you look at professional contact sheets, they're marked up all over the place.
Okay.
The purpose of a contact sheet is not that you're going to frame it and put it up on the wall.
Well, yeah.
It's a working, living document.
It's a review.
Okay? This is how you evaluate your images and make a plan of what you're going to do with the images. Okay, so there's nothing. I don't.
Yeah.
There's no. There's nothing unpure. You know, if you're a purist about marking on your contact sheets, this is exactly what we're supposed to do with them. So so now I have a sequence. So I'm going to say. So and I'm going to call this. I'll put. I think that's my signature. And the reason why I write this down is because I'm just trying to plan out, think about this, so that when I get done and look at, okay, this is the list of the images that I have that I think I want to work with. How are those actually going to work together?
So we're only going to have 5 to 7 of them. We're only going to circle 5 to 7 of them. Is that what I think? Those.
Yeah, well, yeah. I think that's any more than that, it's getting it'll get a little
crowded.
crazy. So it'll be making a little bit too much work for yourself. So 5 to 7 is a good amount.
Well, and
Right.
over 2 rolls of film, that's a lot of photos.
Yeah, or even 3. You know,
Oh,
if some
yeah.
of you guys are thinking about going
Uh-huh.
that route. Okay, so I have 3, and I'm not even going to commit to what they are now. There's a square, and I'm going to just call them rise and set, and they're a sequence. Okay. Then I have a kind of a close-up, and they're, in addition to being sequenced, they're kind of like wide shots, maybe even establishing shots. I have a close-up of this flower. It is a vertical, which, you know, I will, again, layouts where you have variation in the orientation of the images are going to feel less static, more active, more interesting. So you do want to vary not just the size. So varying the size is hierarchy. Okay, you're making a statement. You're saying, this is the image that I think is the most important. It does the best job telling the story, and I'm telling you so by making it large, and I'm trying to direct your attention to it. Okay. But by varying the size and the orientation of the images, orientation meaning horizontal, vertical. Hopefully you guys are shooting vertical images now. You can turn your camera this way if you're not. That's just going to make the image feel the layout feel more active, more interesting. Okay. So I have a vertical here. I don't necessarily need to decide what size it's going to be right now. And this is the flower. Okay. And then I also have a horizontal, and I'm going to call it a medium of the moose. It's not actually really related, but we're going to use it anyway. And moose.
What about if you shoot something that is not necessarily horizontal or vertical, but it's say like a diamond shaped? It's not going just to be wacky. I mean, and you know,
If you're
for
shooting
style.
in like in the Joker's lair, yeah, you can do that. I think that you're probably making things more complicated for yourself at this point in time.
Well, I guess
that's
they
something
ought to be
maybe
more difficult, but I think like.
And then honestly, those things, we see that type of thing, and if they're, not done well, they end up just kind of looking hokey.
Corny.
I agree with
Yeah.
that, but I can still think of some more artistic
So-
reasons why you might want to.
I'm sure.
7th grade.
But in our
science fair.
context, this is pretty basic. I think you should. I would encourage you guys not to make this too hard for yourselves.
Sure.
All right. All right. So I've selected my images. Now the next part part is that I'm going to start to try to imagine what I think this layout is going to look like. So again, just pencil and paper. So you want to keep it agile. You want to be able to move quickly with it. So I mean, it's just a matter of kind of making some decisions about if this is the whole size of the board. I just start thinking about how I might arrange these things. I know I have that 8x10 horizontal, so maybe I'll just start by throwing that toward the middle. I have the sequence, and I'm just going to kind of experiment. Maybe put them 1, 2, 3 up and down, and then I have the medium and the close-up. So I'm just going to kind of play around with just trying to give a basic indication as to how I think these things might lay out well with one another. Now,
There's
so
not a specific layout you have to stick to. It can
no,
be
it could be any. You can go any direction that you want with it. But we're gonna try to do things to make the images work well together, and we want to be clean. Okay, so we've talked about hierarchy. We want something to be seen first, second, third, and I've kind of done that here. We've talked about varying, size, shape, orientation. That makes it, that also helps us with our hierarchy, our organization. Also makes it feel a little bit more lively. And there's another thing that we need to think about, and that's the directional quality images. We call it vector. Okay, so we want to examine the directional quality of our images and see if that works well with the layout we have here. So in this case, if I look at these, none of these really have a strong vector. This one here, in the third one of my sequence, kind of has a upward vector. So on the page, I might actually want to draw an arrow upward. I'm just kind of looking really quickly at each of them. The moose, because the moose is actually pointed to the right, will have a right directional vector. So, and then the rest of them, the haystack kind of just naturally by contrast has a downward and left vector. So you might want to just indicate on your little sketch what you think the directional quality of those images are. You want to make sure, if I did something like this,
These ones right here, are those wallet size or?
well, and I haven't determined size yet. I haven't gotten to the point where I'm talking about size yet. So if I did this with the images, and let's say I even put that image that I'm calling the third image, I put it at the top, and I start to look, now I have my 8x10, the eye is going away from the other images off the page. That number 3, it's up away from the other images, and my moose is now going off the page away from the other images. So you do want to be try to be deliberate with how you arrange things and use those images, directional quality.
Although we do these professionally, obviously this is for our own notes and stuff, right? But however, would you when doing that, would you like us to trim that in with our assignment as well, our planning?
It'll be part of what I evaluate. I don't know that I necessarily need to see it because I'll see the end result.
Sure. But,
Okay. All right. So now if I decide that I actually kind of like this. Now, and you should take your time, you know, spend a little time doing sketches, you know, think, okay, well, what if I did it vertically? What if my sequence was up here? What if, you know, I went like this, you know, so, you know, just kind of, you want to spend some time kind of sketching things out just to see what some different options might look like. I don't necessarily think this will always happen. In fact, I've done this exercise for a number of different classes, and it doesn't always work out the first time, but I actually think that I kind of stumbled upon a pretty decent layout right off the bat. What I like about it is I think I can make this modular. Modular meaning is it's going to make a nice clean rectangle when I'm done. And just really quickly and easily by, you know, I was able to throw the images on there in such a way that the vector works well. So I'm going to go with that. Okay, so the next step would be to actually measure it out. All right, you actually want to develop a grid. Yeah, I wasn't going to say it just like that, but okay, so mounting board. At some point, you'll need to decide how large a piece you want to work with and go out and purchase a piece of mounting board. It's up to you. You can get them at Hobby Lobby, you can get them at Michael's. You can actually get them cut there if you're so inclined. Yeah, that's fine. I'm going to encourage you guys to actually cut them on your own. This is actually just a 3-pack. It's 15 by 20. I'm going to use this for demo purposes. And you know, you can actually, you don't have to have these big, enormous, floppy boards. In fact, oftentimes when I find students who they'll use these large boards, it's like they feel the need to use the whole thing, and it just ends up being a big flimsy mess.
Oh man.
Those overachievers.
Jeez, that's rough.
Well, you want to think like manageable and clean. All right. So some of the things you need that you need to think about when you're creating the grid. Obviously, you need to plan for the entire size. You want it to look and feel clean. So that's why I keep on using this word grid. There is a way that you can be very deliberate about it. All right. So.
So a size like this would be fine.
Yeah, I think
Awesome.
it can work. You don't have to go enormous.
Good.
Now, typically you want a piece for the front that you're going to cut, and then you'll need some sort of backing for it as well.
Should we turn in like just one? Okay, or I mean, I guess it depends on the project, right? For if we have like one of those or two of those, depending on the size of the photos and such, right?
Well, the idea here is that you should be turning in one piece.
Okay.
You don't turn out one photo essay on 2 layouts. It's one piece.
so
I
I
want to
just-
see how it works well together.
But if you're
That's
really-
my requirement.
I'm just saying, if you're working in the gallery or something professionally, you know, you would have multiple ones, right? But,
Yeah, you could.
okay.
All right, let's keep this simple
For
in
not-
the
for
context
not
of
gallery
the assignment.
purposes.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next step for me would be just to basically just try and work out, you know, how this, if I put these photographs into this space, this 15 by 20 space, how that's going to work, okay, whether or not I have enough space. And that may be where it's tricky, because I've kind of laid this out and it's actually wider. This 15 by 20 might not work. I may have to get a larger piece of board, okay? So I'm, you know, again, I'm just, you know, really gonna quickly try to like come up with a basic layout, but now try to add the idea of these dimensions. And I want to think about the different sizes that I have here. This may not work. So if I have 20 wide, and I'm going to throw an 8 by 10 right in the middle here somewhere, I'm taking up half of my real estate with that 8 by 10. And the rest of it's going to add up quickly. So, you know, if I may just like throw it out there. This is my 8 by 10, and then just kind of start to think about how those spaces work within the context of the other photographs I have. So I would encourage you to start with a really simple idea of grid. And what you're seeing here is I'm just basically gonna like line out, you know, just lines where I want things to align, and then think about spaces. So
Well, if that takes
If
up
this
10
is-
inches, then you don't even have enough room for a 5x7.
I
on the
might not.
sides.
I might not. That's what I'm trying to get to here. So if this is 10 inches wide, and I'm going to say I'll do a 1 inch gutter or interval, and then let's say I want a 1 inch margin on each side, I'm now down to like 6 inches left. Okay, so that may, if I plan ahead, I may be able to make this work, but it may dictate the size of my images. I actually am going to be able to make this work, I think, pretty easily. So I could go 2 inches square on my sequence shots and 4 inches wide on my medium and detail shot on the side. Another thing for me to think about, this may help me out as well, and this is something that's like really easy to forget. I'm throwing this down as an 8x10. If I actually cut that hole 8x10, what's going to happen to my 8x10 paper?
It won't be 8x10.
It's not, yeah. So that's another thing too here. So you might want to start to plan for, maybe it's not even an 8x10, now it's a 7x9.
Okay. I was just about to ask,
So
can we
it's
custom
9
cut
inches, and now I have the space maybe to go with a 5 inch on that side. Okay. Now this may actually mean that it may not be as clean and modular as I'd like, because now I'm going to start doing things like, okay, so my 2x2s. Now I have 2 inches, 1 inch, 2 inches, 1 inch, 2 inches. That's so 8 inches up and down. So it's actually going to be a taller space than that 7 inch space for my 7x9, because I don't want to go with an 8x10. Okay, but I might still be able to work with it. I maybe I just float the images. Leave a little 1 inch space at the bottom. That's fine. When I said it would be nice if it was modular, that doesn't mean that I expect that all of your photo layouts are going to be perfectly modular.
All right. Would you want us to add captions and things to the photos, or do you just have them as is?
The captions, all the information you have to do. You actually have to write captions for your images, and then you have to tell a brief story, write a little narrative for me.
Outline for
Yeah.
That's going to go on the back.
Oh,
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
And then I kind of come across here to this other one here. So I have 5 inches wide, and I have this moose shot. So maybe I'll say maybe it's 3 inches, 1 inch, which then gives me 4 inches in height. So I'd have that's gonna be tight for that one, 4x5. So maybe I go ahead and make. No, that's actually, I don't want to go any taller than that. So I got a 4x5. That's not gonna work. And a 3x5 here. Because now what just happened here, this is why we want to try to work this out. As I'm doing this, what just happened was my vertical, based on the grid that I've created here, just became a horizontal, magically. So that's not gonna work. But I have other options. So maybe I decide, okay, just like I'm going to have that little 1 inch at the bottom of the image, maybe I'll go ahead and allow that that vertical shot to, I'll go 4x3. And it just won't line up with that outside edge. Okay? Now, as I get a little closer, and then I also want to look at, okay, so if it's 10, 15, I also now have 3.5 and 3.5 margins. But now I want to try to clean that up a little bit. I'm again going to start to create that grid. So I have my 3.5, my 3.5. I have a 1 and a 1 for my margins here. Then I have my 3x5 over here with a 4x3 on top of that. So I'm just trying to create these spaces. Imagine what this is going to look like. My 7x9. Because you want to visualize what that's actually going to look like before you start putting that completely together. Okay? And then, kind of say, well, am I okay with those spaces that I have? It's because I've got a little extra space here, a little extra space here. All right? And I actually think that that's probably okay. We just want to be, you want to try to create clean lines where you can.
So you should align it with each other, or cause I was thinking with the one right there, the most top left one, right? What if you centered that a little bit more and then put, would that look okay, or?
You could, but the problem is and we talked about this in computer graphics for a couple of you guys that are in that class. The key to making a grid work is making rules and sticking to the rules.
Yeah.
If you can make rules that, then you apply consistently and you can make them, it'll look good, you can get away with it. But I'd be careful, because think about like this, so I'm gonna float my 7x9, and maybe that works, okay? But what happens now with this 3x4 over the 4x3 over 3x5 if I float this 3 inches over the 5 inches? I'm now going to create this really weird, awkward space here in between those two photos that is now larger than any other space in my grid anywhere else in
There's
this
no
layout.
balance to it anymore.
Exactly. Yeah, I've now, so
It's not symmetrical.
I want to
but
be
still- it looks
careful.
stylized though, right?
I'm trying to help you here, Eric.
Okay.
You want to be careful about floating and centering images, because when you start to do that, you break the rules of your grid, so to speak. You then start creating these arbitrary spaces and things start to look funky. And that's how you end up with this is like my joke grid layout here. Yeah, this should not be what your photo layout should look like, where you just have arbitrary, I'm going to take 5 photos and I'll just kind of space them out all over the place, okay? You want to have, it's going to look cleaner, nicer if you have consistent spacing and established rules, okay? Now, as you can see here on this one, I did actually I'm floating on one side and not on the other. I'm aligning here. And the reason this may work, it may not work. I would say the reason why it could work in this layout is because all of the space, all the additional space, is on the outside. It's on the margin.
And we
And
want
no,
that,
it doesn't
right?
break up the photos at all.
Exactly. Now, if I did this in such a way, and then I now have an extra large space right here
Ooh,
or
yeah.
here, that's where it starts to look funky.
Well, I don't think if you have it laying how you do landscape wise, right? I think it looks a little weird having that.
But if you went vertical,
yes.
it would look. Yeah, I agree. What Eric's saying is, horizontally, that works. But if we had gone vertically, now we have something funky, and I agree. So this is why it's so important to spend time just putting pencil to paper. All right? Now the next part, once you've decided what your grid is actually going to be, what it's going to look like, that's the real tricky part. That's the part that takes the most time.
Oh man.
Don't rush this, okay? So what I've done here on this one is, now that this is actually this layout right here, I actually sketched that out on this one here. Notice that it is a 7x9 in the middle there, not an 8x10. So don't make that mistake. If you make an 8x10 hole in your board and make an 8x10 print, it's going to fall through. You need to plan for it, whatever. You could probably do a 7.5 by a 9.5, but be really careful.
Ooh, man, that's 1/4 inch margins there.
It's so you can see here how I've planned this all out, and I've gone through and I have measured out every little bit of it here. I've mathematically figured out how that's going to work on the board. All right, and it looks like even with this plan here, I could have actually done this with one of these 15 by 20 boards. If you find, and so it's actually a good idea to do this before you buy your mat board, so that you're not limited by the size of your mat board. Like say you want to do 7 photographs, and you're going to do an 8 by 10 and a 6 by 8 because you really have 2 great emotional shots and really do a good job of telling the story. Well, now you start to put everything together with your grid, and it's just absolutely not going to work. You may want to have a larger piece that you can then
Just
cut
go
down to
up and use
size.
space wisely.
Well, if you go up, like, okay, I like these little 15 by 20s because they're nice and manageable. They're also not terribly expensive. If you go up to a piece like this, the mistake that I see students make is they think they have to use the whole board, okay? So you make the plan for what your layout's going to be, and then you make the decision as to whether or not you want to use the whole board. Like the reason why I'm going to use the whole board for this layout is because I can make the photograph. I've actually shrunk my photographs just a little bit, but with the 1-inch margins, I'm actually going to go all the way out to the edges of that sheet. All right. If you're going to do a larger layout, just because you have this doesn't mean you have to use the whole piece. Lay out the grid that you want. Work, get the photographs to work the way you want, and then cut the sheet of paper down to the size that you need it to be. You don't have to stick with that.
Trim the fat.
Exactly. All right, so after you've figured out what your grid's going to be, you can see here I've actually made all the measurements, so I know exactly where everything's going to exist, how large it's going to be. And you can see here I actually have 2 by 2. Apparently I like 2 by 2 square sequences. That doesn't mean that you have to do that. That's just a joke. I just thought it was funny that I did it twice now. In this case, I had a 4 by 6 that I favored over these 2 smaller pieces that I'm putting into this one. But I've gone through and I've made sure that everything measures out just like it should. Then I've gone through, and all I did was I laid down this ruler. I made marks, 2.5, and then 6.5. So there's a 4-inch hole here. Then out to 7.5 to 14.5, because this is a 7 by 9. I just measured it out, and I just made little tick marks. You can see the differences. Here are my little tick marks. Here you can see them. And then once I had the marks in, then I went and I drew the lines, across so that everything, I had basically the holes. You can see here I make little X's where I'm going to cut out, and yeah. And that's about it. But this, you can't rush this part. You really have to take your time. All right? All right, as far as the cutting goes, and that's why I have this big silly stack of paper here, I don't want you to just, and this is a planning thing, and I can't tell you how many times I've seen this happen. The project's due at 1 o'clock, that last clear class period, and inevitably someone will be in here at noon trying to figure out their mat board and making cuts an hour before the assignment is due. All right, give yourself time.
Yeah,
all right.
it looks sloppy.
Well, I can't tell you how many times the real problem is that if you don't take your time setting this up, thinking this out, drawing out all the lines, you will make a mistake. You will ruin your mat board, and you will then you'll have the decision. Do I run over to Hobby Lobby and buy another piece of mat board, or do I just turn it in even though I know it's going to look sloppy?
What did you cut it with? Like an X-Acto knives, or?
That's what I'm about to show you next. That's what all this stuff is here. Okay, so what I wanted to, the important thing that I was going to say here is that you want to practice. That's why I have all these pieces here. Don't come in here and the first cut that you make is when you're starting to cut the mat board for your project. Okay, you want to make sure that you have cut some mat board beforehand so that you're just comfortable with how it works. All right, so let me now move all of my junk out of the way.
Well, I would say also know your consistency, because all of them can be different, right? The map board, like, the consistency.
Oh yeah. They're pretty. I mean, I have students. Yeah, and understand like the difference between like mat board and foam core. Every year I get someone who turns their project in on foam core. So yeah, mat board. You want like good quality mat board, and then also you can have fun with it. You see there's some green, some red, whatever. I just like black.
Only black.
I'm boring. And then you can see here there's the exterior color and an interior color, and I'm gonna one of the blades is a beveled blade, so you see how you get that nice white line.
That's crisp.
If you cut it well, it can be a real pain in the butt. So there's some tricks to it. All right, so let me get all this out of the way. The cameraman's in the way. I'm just kidding. You're fine. I can work around you. All right, and yeah, this is kind of almost gonna be realistic in a way because this is the first time that I've had this stuff out this semester. I haven't even looked at any of this
You
stuff.
haven't been
So
practicing.
I haven't. I didn't practice, so this is good. I have a box full of all kinds of wonderful things. Okay, so we have a couple of different kinds of cutters here. This is a straight cutter. So if you are cutting your board down to size, this is the cutter that you would use. All right. It's not terribly complicated, but and please be careful. Let's
Please
not.
be careful.
Careful not to drop the razor blade.
Yeah, actually, those are not supposed to just be out sitting.
Where did that one come from?
Yeah. Apparently, the last time we had this out,
Jeez.
I had a student who did not put these away like they were supposed to be put away. You have to be careful. So, and I haven't had this out for a while. So you want to actually, there's little rails here. So you just basically set this on the guide. That's how you get a nice straight cut. This is to help you when you're working on the margins, the outside. But if you're making a larger cut, you may not be able to use that. So straight cuts, pretty simple. I don't even. Let's have random pieces. Okay. Now, this is one of the little tricks here. This is supposed to be straight. Make sure that you're careful with it because see this little piece here? Obviously it's moving. So if I put this here and I just assume that that's straight, I'm going to be very disappointed. If I push it down, it actually should be straight.
Is it supposed to be pushed back?
Yeah, it
So
should.
just verify that
yeah,
it's pushed back.
It's just an old cutter though. So this one actually works pretty easy. It's just really simple. But you just want, the big thing here is take your time. Okay, no jerking on it, because if I had my hand here and I'm struggling with it, I'm just gonna run that right over my hand. So just
Sound.
nice and slow.
So satisfying.
I'm glad you're having a good time. Okay, and it does take a little bit of hand strength. So I every year I do run into someone who has trouble with this because they don't have the hand strength. It's okay to ask for some help. I don't even know what he's laughing about anymore.
sorry.
I'm not going to ask.
Not
I'm
funny. It's not even
asking.
funny.
All right. So, but my point here is I'm just trying to show you guys. You want to take your time and be careful. All right. Now, straight cut is pretty simple, pretty easy. Again, just be careful with it. This is the bevel cutter. This is what you'll want to use to cut the windows for your images. A couple of things you want to be careful with, you want to look at. I'm looking at the blade here right now, and these wear out. They do chip, and actually this one here, it is actually chipped. The little corner has come off of it. So I'll want to do some test cuts to make sure it's still cutting well. and just to get comfortable with it. Now, one of the things you want to make sure you're doing here, this is actually an important, well, I'm going to actually bring this through to show this. The thing you want to be careful of is that you can't simply take your board through and let's say, okay, here's a line, I'm going to make a cut. And now, here's a line, I'm going to make a cut. Here's a line, I'm going to make a cut. And just do that all the way through. Why not?
Oh, the angle of the blade.
Because my bevel's going the same way every time. You want to spin the paper so that the bevel, basically the picture window is always on the right-hand side of
The blade?
yes.
Okay.
Because that way you're cutting in this way, you're going to get that white edge. Okay? If you cut the other way, so like if I have
It's gonna bevel in, and you're
and
not
then
gonna
it's
see
just
that.
black, and then you have this weird gap underneath, where you may or may not, if it depending on your measurements, it might not even fit right. Okay, so you always cut with the window for the photograph on the right hand side. All right, and you spin to get that cut. All right, so be careful because that's a temptation. You're like, all right, I got this grid. I'm ready to rock and roll. I'm gonna just slide it through here. Cut, slide, cut, slide, cut, slide, cut. Oh man, I'm efficient. And then you look later and you're like, oh crap. I suppose if you did it, it could be like a graphic design element. If you did it like consistently, it'd be like an L shape every single time. I don't know. So be careful of that. Now, again, the same thing with this. You just want to be careful. And I'm just, that's not, neither of these are actually rectangular. I'm just gonna go with it. Okay, I'm gonna use, oh, right, I'm not gonna use that one. If you use the guide and the outside of the mat board is not straight, your window is not going to be straight. But I'm just gonna show you just for the purposes of like demo, I'm going to use this piece. All right, now where this is handy is if you are cutting toward the edge, it's got little guides on it. You can actually move this into place, and let's say, sure, about that. And then you just turn that, and it'll actually
Lock.
stay in place. Now, need a pencil. You have to have guides drawn on. Like I didn't draw anything on this one, so now I gotta fake it like I did. Well, this is gonna be a terribly strange sized photograph, but why not? And way off kilter. Wow, this thing is crazy. You want to actually have it all drawn out, and you want to make sure your lines extend beyond. Don't be that perfectionist that's like, I'm going to stop right here, and right here, and right here, and right here. Because then you cut, and you cut off your guides, and you can't see what the hell you're doing. You need those extra line extensions so you can see where you need to cut. In fact, I'm probably going to struggle with this a little bit. No, this should be fine. Because what I'm going to line up with is actually a line on the outside of the bevel cut. There's a line there. That's how I know I'm aligned in the right spot. My cameraman was falling asleep there. All right, so I'm going to slide this on, okay? Now I'm going to align that, I've aligned that line with my drawn line. Now one of the fun things about this, and this now has to do with even more hand strength, and we'll see if the blade is even sharp, is that if I just push this blade in, it's going to grab the paper and it's going to walk. All right, it's going to move. That's what this is for. This right here, this little tack, I'm actually going to push that into the board, then I'm going to push the blade in. Then I let go of the tack, and I slide. That's not all the way in, but that's all right. it's good for us to go over this.
And go till the line meets again.
And then that's what I'm doing. That's how I know how to stop. So if I don't have lines extending all the way around and my image is small, I may have problems. Now, you look here, and actually it did cut through. Okay, so you want to be careful. That's why it's important to evaluate the blade and do some cuts just to check. Now, this is not a super clean cut, but it's close enough. It's actually getting through the board. If I'm concerned that I'm not getting a cut all the way through, I will actually hold the board into place, go back, do a second run, okay? This one seems to have done just fine. So now I'll go ahead and lay this on here. Again, get that into place, push the pin in, blade in, nice and easy. Notice that I'm not in a hurry, no herky-jerky motions. You didn't giggle at herky-jerky? Come on. Good gravy, Eric. No consistency.
Eric laughed.
The other Eric, yeah. And I'm pressing down with my left hand here because I don't want this to move. That's the other reason why you don't want to, pull real hard, is that you're just going to pull your paper out of place. Okay? Pull your paper out of place? How is that humorous? What is wrong with you people?
He was waiting for the Bill Cosby joke.
I don't.
You ain't got any
I got
more?
nothing
You got
there.
one?
No.
That's it?
No, Garrett.
And notice each time that I push the little pin in, and I go straight to the line. Okay, now this part is probably, okay, so it didn't fall out. So my cut is not perfectly clean. That's gonna happen, all right? Do not, no. That was the next part. Don't do what Lindsay just said. Okay, you wanna be really careful with it, and that's why I have these other blades in there. So basically, I'm just gonna gently push and try to see where it's catching.
On the corners there. Huh?
Yeah, and because if I just like pull it out, I'm gonna tear it, and then it's gonna look awful.
Dang.
Black paint.
It doesn't work.
Darn.
And then I'm just gonna. This is the tricky part. You want to be real careful. You can use an X-Acto blade or just a razor here, but you're gonna try to slide. Actually, I don't know that even went all the way through. Gently slide that blade in there, and then just try to work it to the corner. That one popped up now. And I'm looking to see where it's not cut. I'm not just like assuming and then just like, cutting all over the place. I'm looking to see where it looks like I've got an issue. I'm gonna gently work the blade in there and then gently cut until it releases. And this is still not gonna come out that fantastic. So I'll change the blade for you guys. Doesn't have to be perfect, but I want you guys to have as clean a projects as possible. All right. And you can see there on the corners. Yeah.
Fantastic.
I try to be conservative with replacing the blades because you guys are going to abuse them anyway. Please be careful with them, not only for your own safety, but, we go through a lot of blades this way too. All right? So, use a piece, basically what this is the ends of somebody else's project. This is like somebody just had extra paper when they're done. This is probably actually someone's, in fact, if you look at it here, you can see the bevel on it. But this is somebody's 8x10 window that they popped out. And that probably is actually someone playing with the cutter. That's why that's cut like that, all right? But take your time, all right? Give yourself time and make sure that it's, that you're not ruining your project. Now, when you're done and you're actually putting the photos into the frame, we have 2 big giant rolls of film. This is archival quality,
That's tape.
acid-free tape. Yes. to tape the photographs into the windows, and then this is double-sided tape. It's for a backing, so that when you're done putting all your
We'll put the
images
back
in,
on.
you want to put a backing on it.
What would you recommend for the backing?
Actually, mat board. If you wanted to do foam core, that would be an appropriate place to use foam core, but yeah, not for the actual print. Okay? And if you run into a situation where you need to have the blade replaced, come see me and I'll actually replace the blade.
And where is all this? It's located
It's
in the
gonna
back room, or-
be right in, I
Yeah.
just keep it right around the corner in this room. I asked you guys to box all the little tools up and put them in here. Please don't leave the razor blades just like falling out all over the place, like apparently was done last semester. Yeah, otherwise someone's gonna get hurt. But all you gotta do is just ask for Jake or I to allow you guys in there, and then just make sure that there's actually time in the lab. So now's where you have to. I'm pretty sure I actually gave you guys in the beginning of this. I can't remember, but in the beginning of the semester, I should have given you guys a lab schedule. So
We got a
okay,
lab schedule.
she's not okay. Good. I did that part of my job. Thank goodness. So look at the lab schedule. Don't come in here when you know there's going to be a class in here. Come in here when you know that you're going to have time to.
So there's only one of these, so only one of
That's
us could be
it.
working on it at a time.
Yeah. But well, and be courteous. Think of that. Like last year I had a student who came in and was taking their time and knew there was a lot of other people that wanted to use it, so they just they were like, okay, yeah, you go ahead. I'm not in a hurry, and let other people play through, so to speak. All right.
And ended up having to be in a hurry once they were done.
No, they were fine. Because I mean, particularly, like you guys are we're going to be presenting and critiquing these in that last week of class.
We have to present.
Yeah.
I have to talk, and not just like
I'm not
teenage
feeling
sarcasm.
I'm sick that day.
You're sick that day. Okay. I'm gonna be sick when I'm putting your grades together then.
Okay.
Oh man.
Apply cold water to that, bro.
All right. Questions? Okay, this is the remainder of class today and class next week. These are lab periods. So these are times for you guys to be working on your projects, working in the darkroom, making prints, asking for help, practicing with the mat board cutter, planning out your grid. So it would be a good idea for you to actually bring pencil, paper, mat board, so you can draw out your grid and maybe even start cutting your mat board next week in class. This is we're down to it, guys. This is it. That is the last thing. The last demo or lecture I'm giving. That was it. There you go.
Rest of it's all up.
Yeah, that's slow clapping. Slow clapping. No. All right.
All right. Well,
Okay. And break. Let's get some stuff done.
So